You're listening to the Mindful Mama Podcast, episode 169. Today, we're talking about how to enforce the rules mindfully in a special on-air coaching session. Welcome to the Mindful Mama Podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clarke-FIELDS, Mindful Mama Mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I'm the author of the upcoming new book, Raising Good Humans. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome if you're new, and welcome back if you've been listening before. I am so glad to be in your ears today. This is a really special episode. You are going to hear from Alicia, nurse and a mom of 3. And we look at some of the questions of like, well, what do you do when you have a child who is pushing the boundaries? How do you enforce the rules mindfully, right? And Alicia says, that she and her child, they go at it and we bump heads, and his personality is much different from his older brother who's a rule follower. So you get to listen as we talk about how to handle her 5-year-old pushing the boundaries. And I really want you to listen for, some of these important ideas. And one is how you talk is just as important as what you say. So how you say it is really, really, really important. You're going to hear that in this conversation. You're going to hear about how to respond to yourself when you lose it and why that matters so much, right? And then I love this idea, and it's been so helpful for me and so many others recently, is this idea of to treat your child as if they are your friend's kid. Really interesting, right? Like, what does this mean? So this is a very powerful conversation. I know you're going to get so many takeaways. If you're new to the podcast, I have a lot of interviews. Sometimes we have solo episodes, and sometimes I do episodes like this where I take the coaching that I do with moms and dads sometimes, and I bring it on the air so you can get a taste of it. And so I hope you really enjoy this. And if you are interested, I want to let you know that at the time that this comes out, which is the end of May 2019, hello, future people, if you're listening. Well, I still have spots. I think I still have spots because I'm recording this ahead of time. So I may still have spots in my Mindful Mama transformation coaching groups. And this is a group coaching program that I run where I make small groups, maximum of 6 people. So there's a limited number of spots where we go through the steps and the stages to help you really walk the talk so that you are not struggling and wondering if what you're doing is the right thing, so that you have the tools to feel amazing and alive in yourself, and to also respond to your kids with confidence and be able to really truly walk the talk and thrive in your life, right? It's kind of going from this idea of, our lives are too short to just be constantly just getting through the day, right? Like, we want to be able to live fully and thrive and also have great relationships with our kids. So some of the ideas that we talk about in this podcast on the Honor Coaching session, we will talk about in the group coaching program. And so there may still be spots left. If you would like to work with me or are curious about what this is, please go check it out at mindfulmamamentor.com/group coaching. That's mindfulmamamentor.com/group coaching. And now join me at the table as I talk to Alicia. Alicia, thanks so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad to have you. We were just talking about our local roots in Beantown. You're in Beantown. So exciting, which I think is such a funny name for a town. Beantown. Dear listener, if you don't know, Beantown is a nickname for Boston. And Alicia, do you think it's because of the baked beans? Is that the point of Beantown?
So. I know. I think so. It's the baked beans. But they should definitely come up with a different nickname for Boston, because there's so much more than just baked beans.
So baked beans and so much more. Awesome.
Right.
I'm so happy to have you here. And you've been through the mindful parenting course, and you have a small gaggle of little kiddos that challenge you every day, just as my girls challenge me every day. So I wonder if it would be a good idea to just kind of start off with, just like we do in our mindful parenting course, like what are your wins? What can you lean into and acknowledge that you're just appreciating about your path and all that's going on for you?
Sure, definitely. I would say one of the wins that it's funny, we talk in the mindful parenting about touch, and I have two boys. And one thing that I never realized really was important was giving them hugs. I know that sounds like a normal parenting thing to do, but I just recently have been really focusing on making sure that before they leave the house, really kind of telling them, I love you, and giving them actual physical love.
Mm.
Because with boys, it can be something that you just sort of like forget about.
Mm.
And I think almost having my third child, which was a girl, kind of also helped me realize that girls are just different than boys in the sense of they're wanting physical touch and wanting to be comforted, and sometimes we kind of take on that stereotypical parenting style with boys where we're just sort of like, yep, you're fine, let's go off to school, see ya, yeah, bye. And
Mm.
that was one thing in the mindful parenting course that I was like, geez, maybe I'm not giving them enough of that, like, physical touch and comforting when they are sad or when they are angry, because I feel like boys display their feelings much differently than girls, and instead of me sort of kind of getting angry with them, I've been really sort of trying to just comfort them and say, hey, what is going on? Why are you feeling this way? Let's talk about it. And one of your recent podcasts, the anger podcast, was like huge, because it was like just reminding me that it can turn into this kind of explosive thing where sometimes if we sit back and say to our kids, listen, I'm here, whether you just need a hug or if you need a kiss or if you just need me to even just be present here, I can do that. But I don't need to get angry with you. And that's something that
Mm.
I've really I feel like has been a huge win through the
Mm.
mindful parenting course, is really trying to not jump on the bandwagon of getting angry. And that's something that that was one of the main reasons why I joined, because I felt like I was getting angry with my kids, instead of helping them with their problems.
Mhm. Mhm. And that's pretty normal. Like we culturally, we tend to look at children, we all kind of live in this sort of same cultural soup that looks at children and says that behavior is like it's either good or bad, and we're put in this place to sort of judge it, and we're kind of taught that we kind of have to control it and things like that, and we don't ever start to say like what's causing the behavior, right? We always, culturally, I'm saying, like in that big
Right.
picture, it's like, and we all live in that, so with that, it's no wonder we just take that on. But I love that you're looking at that sort of, I'm so happy that it's helped you look at that physical comfort and touch piece. I mean, and that's really beautiful, because yeah, I mean, we can, just as we just live in this sort of cultural milieu, and we can unconsciously take on sort of ideas about boys and girls, and that can be, we don't even realize it, right? So that's
Right.
cool.
And that's what I think, that was a huge thing, that it's like I just wasn't even realizing that I was doing this, that, it was sort of like, I'd send them off to school and sort of wasn't even giving them that moment to like sort of give me a hug, or, they were going to bed and giving them a kiss and stuff like that, that you just think that they're getting older as boys. Like you do it from a certain age point, and then they start to get older and you're like, okay, yeah, go to bed, and
Mm.
I'm like, wait, they need that. They need that physical touch, that feeling that their parents are present. And so that's been huge for me.
That's cool. And so are they responding to that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, kids are different, and all three of mine are completely different. But
and their ages 7, 5, and 2 right now, right?
7, 5, and 2. Yep, we're 7, 5 going on 21, and 2 turning into a teenager. So, but
that tends to happen at 3.
Yeah,
Oi.
yeah,
It's like 3 and 13.
Yes, exactly. And so I feel like it's definitely helped with my older one, but the most impactful child that I've seen it most working on is my middle. And he's just kind of a real boy. My older one has that sensitive side to him. He's really very good about communicating how he feels, and we do a lot of talking, whereas my middle one tends to be kind of rough and tumble, and I never realized how much he really needs that physical touch and how much he really thrives on that. I mean, at night we'll kind of lay together and kind of talk about the day, and I'm like, I can't get over the transformation. He just turns into this like delicate flower like at night, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is what you probably all day had, this like personality that you're putting out to other people, and you're trying to keep up with it all day. And then it's like he finally just has this release at the end of the day where he is just completely snuggled up with me, kissing me, hugging me. I love you, mommy, and it's like, we weren't doing that, because I feel like a lot of our time together was kind of butting heads a lot, because it was like, I wasn't understanding probably what he needed. And I think that's what he did ultimately need to some degree.
Was that connecting? He really wanted to, he needed that connecting. That's beautiful. There's a documentary. I haven't seen it, but I've heard so much about it. Oh yeah. It's called that you might want to watch. And also all
definitely
boys, it's called The Mask You Live In.
Oh, okay.
And it's about manhood, basically, the mask you live in. So you might want to check that out. That's cool.
I definitely will, because a lot of times, and I'll make my husband watch it with me, because he's one of 3 boys. And so, sometimes he kind of will say stuff to me like, you're being too sensitive with them, and they're fine. And just kind of is used to growing up in that boy lifestyle where it's like brush it off and off you go, and
stuff it down and have it come out in aggression later.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but it's interesting because I feel like with me doing this mindful parenting course, I've told him a lot of I've actually referred a lot of your podcasts over to him. I'm like, listen to this one. This one's a good one. But even the discipline one, just kind of saying like, listen, certain styles are outdated and I don't agree with them. And I just think that, especially with my middle, it's really a matter of communication and offering that moment to say, tell me what is going on, and really kind of investigating it rather than saying, that's it, go to your room and, the punishment style. So.
Yeah. So that kind of leads us to the challenges, Alicia. I'm so glad that this wins of that comfort, and that's great. I love that. And I like that you're starting to like tame your own anger, because that's so crucial. I mean, and I speak from personal experience with that too. So there's no stones being thrown, but let's look at what are some of the challenges coming up now. And let's think about how we can kind of help and tweak some of your approaches with that.
Sure. I know it's interesting how I always say to other moms that it's like you go in so many highs and lows. It's like you're going through and you're parenting and you're like, wow, we really are connecting. We are doing great. And that's how I felt last month. I was like, you know what? Like, we are totally getting it. Everyone's, getting along nicely. And lately, it just seems like we're sort of getting off the path. And I think one of the biggest things is we're running into issues with rules
Mm-hmm.
and regulations of the household.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a common thing for most parents, but I swear it's like the nice weather brings out this like, woo, let's go.
Actually, I think the
And
same thing is happening in my house too.
oh, really?
Good weather and some
Yeah.
pushback.
Yep. And it's crazy because it's like you wait for it too, because like the one nice day I'm like, yes, let's get outside and we don't have to come inside until it's like the sun's going down and this is great. But then it's hard reeling them back in, because it is like what we're running into lately is we're having issues with some of the rules in regards to where we can walk to by
Uh-huh.
ourselves, where we can ride our bikes to. And then also like bedtime has been really difficult because it's I swear the time change just completely throws everything off to some degree. It seems like we're going to bed later and later. And I'm like, I can just see it in my kids. Like they're just exhausted. And, it's so specifically one particular instance recently was my middle one wants to walk to school, and we are close enough to that I would not allow him by himself to walk to school.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably not even allow him with my older son who's in first grade. It's first grade and kindergarten, my two boys. I probably would not let the two of them walk together. Per se. I mean, maybe if I walk them halfway, but there is a neighbor that's in second grade that walks with his sister who's in kindergarten. And I do feel comfortable because I feel like this boy has been doing it since he's like been in first grade. And he sort of has that personality where he's kind of, he's kind of like the caretaker of the children. He's like, okay, everyone stay on the sidewalk, this, that. What I'm running into is, for instance, one day I kind of, followed them to school, just kind of halfway to make sure that, that he's staying kind of, there's no, like they do a cut through and then there is no sidewalk. So it's like, I've talked to him, I'm like, yeah, you have to stay. Everyone's going to school. Everyone's going to work. People aren't looking. You need to stay on the side or else, I'm not going to allow you to do this anymore. This is a privilege. I'm letting you walk to school. That's a big deal. You're only in kindergarten. And at times I go back and forth where I'm like, am I making the right decision? I mean, he's my child that thrives on autonomy. He wants to be an older kid. It's always the way he's been. Whereas my older one would prefer if I held his hand and walked to school, it's like one extreme to the next. So, we ran into that day. I said, I watched you. I finally caught up to them and I said, I watched you. You were out in the middle of the street practically. I said, this is a safety issue and we can't have you doing this. So I think we're going to have to kind of cut back and kind of have a talk about whether we can let you walk to school or not. And then the next day, I probably should have made it more specific to him that like, you're not walking to school tomorrow. But I sort of, with him, it's like, I just meet so much resistance that sometimes I get so almost frightened to kind of say to him, like, sorry, you lost your privilege. Cause it's like, I'm so afraid for the backlash. Yeah. But, the next day I said, I think I'm going to, I want today, I'm not working today. I want to drive you and your brother to school. And he just sort of was like, saw my neighbor, a couple doors down outside. And he's like, oh no, I'm going to walk with him. And off he like ran, like took off. Oh my. And I was like, okay, well, so I'm like, and meanwhile, it's like my daughter like had just gone to the bathroom and needed a diaper change. And I'm like, I see him with him and they're starting. So I ended up driving to school, but I drove very slowly and went where I could see him coming through the cut through. And I watched him, and he did do a good job that day walking with my neighbor and my neighbor's daughter. And they went, to the crossing guard across the street. And I saw him before he went in, because I had drove my son and parked. And I said, I'm just really disappointed. And I said, I can't believe you just left like that. And he was like, well, I told you I was walking with him.
He thought that was okay. He thought it was cool.
Right. Yeah.
I think probably fully thought, I'm good, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk to school.
Yeah. Yep. And so this has just been kind of like, this is more something that just happened this week.
Yeah.
But this has sort of kind of been accumulating. It's like every day there's kind of a new issue where it's like he just wants to be more like, just the other
he
day
wants that autonomy, right. And he's just kind of expecting it. He's not checking in with you about it. It sounds like that's one of the issues, right? Is that he's not, there's not a clear line of communication over what's the next boundary kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. And then I talked it over with my husband at one point, I think like 2 weeks ago when we had an issue. The weather got nice and they wanted to ride bikes. And I said, okay, that's fine. I said, on the sidewalk, and one of my neighbor's houses that's on the corner. I said, the Joyces, you cannot go past the Joyce's house. Okay. Okay. And then, I look out at one point and he's rounding the corner and I'm like, oh my gosh, so when he came back, I yelled to him and then he rode back and I said, I'm sorry, we're going to have to put the bike away. I said, you just broke the rule. And it was like, he's like, he kind of gets very angry.
You're mean.
You're mean. Yeah. You're crazy. Oh, you're crazy. I'm old enough to ride. And he's like, I know you said their house, but I just turned over. Like his is always like, he's one of those kids. But I just was rounding it a little bit to see who was over at so-and-so's. So he went upstairs, was very angry. And of course, now I'm very angry because I'm like, he just is not listening to me. So it took me some time, but I had to kind of just really think it through because I'm like, I know if I go up right now, this is going to be a big fight because he and I butt heads and I just know the way that he acts. And so I, kind of had to sit and think, why is he doing this? What is the situation? And I thought the situation is a lot of the neighbors in my neighborhood are older. There's, maybe one or two girls that are kindergartners, but the boys are all first grade, second grade, third grade. And I think he's just really trying to kind of live up to this, to what they're doing. But once I finally calmed down, I went upstairs, we talked it through, but I just feel like he's the type of kid that sometimes even though we talk it through, it's like, I don't want to, and that's where I'm running into my issue right now is that I don't want to use punishment. And I don't want to say, that's it. You're not riding your bike for a week. And I have friends that do that. They love telling their kids. I mean, my kids are obsessed lately with the word grounded.
Oh my!
They're always like, "Am I going to get grounded?" And I'm like, I don't even think at that age. I just feel like at their age they don't even understand what that entails. Like they can't even understand that concept really. So, he was all like, "Am I getting grounded now?" And I'm like, no, but we're going to have to review what privileges you might lose. And so I feel like I'm struggling with what is going to be the best discipline method for him with his desire to gain more
Yeah.
autonomy. And he's more of a reward child, where it's like, I have to sort of say, you did a good job riding your bike. I'm so proud of you. Okay, you get to do, but it's like when he does the wrong
Mhm.
thing, I don't know how to,
Mm.
I
Mm.
forget to do the reward thing because I get so hung up on the what he did that was wrong.
Well, both reward and punishment are killers of intrinsic motivation. So
Hmm.
there's like 40 years of research on that. So both
That's good to
both
know.
yeah, both reward and punishment, they kind of kill our inner desire to do something for its own sake.
Hmm.
So don't feel bad about not being good at reward.
That's good.
But it
Because
sounds like
everyone wants to do the charts. Everyone's like,
yeah,
well, what
they
if you set up
sticker
the chart
charts
for
are they've tons of research on how they are bad for learning. I mean, they really there's so much research on that. Somehow we still persist on it. But reward and punishment, they actually kill that intrinsic motivation. So what
Mhm.
you want rather than extrinsic motivation, right? Like I'm going to do this cuz if I get caught, I'll get in trouble, right?
Mhm.
Or then that extrinsic motivation leads to kids, lying or sneaking and things like that because the motivation is to just simply not get caught, right?
Right, right. And I don't want
You,
him to think that. I don't want him
yeah,
to, because someone was like, well, he obviously doesn't like fear you. And I'm like, correct. I don't want my child to
yeah,
fear
no.
me.
No, no. So let's go back to the basic definition of discipline, right? Which if you go back to the Latin roots of discipline, it means to teach. A disciple is a follower, right? So you want to think of yourself as a teacher or a coach or a mentor. Like you're teaching your little son about how to kind of get along in life and how to do this thing, right?
Hmm.
So you think of yourself as someone who's teaching him about the boundaries and teaching him about the safety and teaching him about why and what and how of this. So what we want to think about is kind of the natural consequences of this. And I think you handled that pretty well. I mean, him going further than the boundary and him not then being able to bike that afternoon seems like a real natural consequence because he showed you he wasn't able to mature enough to be able to handle that boundary right in that moment. So
Hmm.
not being able to bike is a perfect natural consequence to that. And if that can happen without a sense of like drama, blame, and shame, all the better, right? Like, I am
Hmm.
so sorry, buddy. This sucks. I know you hate it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't, your hands are tied. You can't let him bike if he's not going to be safe with it, right?
Yeah. And
So
I like the way that you just said that, because I tend that when I do give him the consequence, the delivery is so important, because
yes.
sometimes it's like, I'm like, nope, the bike is going away. We're all done with the bike, and it's like, you know,
Yeah.
any normal person is going to be like, oh my God, I hate you. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And it's hard because your stress response is triggered, right?
right.
Because you're seeing
Hmm.
him, and there's fear and things like that. I mean, me too. It's hard for me too to
Hmm.
like kind of be on to kind of get a little bit more detached about some of those things, and I get frustrated and triggered by my kids too. It's totally
Hmm.
natural. But the more you can start to kind of, and especially with him, this is going to happen again and again and again. So you can kind of plan ahead for, okay, when these things happen, you know, I'm just going to deliver the message with empathy, as
Hmm.
much as you can, because there's not really much you can do about it if he can't abide by the boundaries that are going to keep him safe. Then you have to, that's your job. You got to make sure he's not going crazy with it. And I think that it sounds like you're walking that path really well. Like he wants to walk to school and you have this neighbor, and so you're saying, okay, well, I'll make sure he's safe, and that's really the way you want to do it, right? You want to
Hmm.
first when we're teaching them how to do anything, whether it's walk to school or do the laundry or all those things, like first we do it for them, right? then
Hmm.
then we do it with them, and then we are there by their side and watch them do it. and then they do it on their own, right? So these are
Yeah.
kind of the 4 steps. We do it for
Mm-hmm.
them, we do it with them, we watch them, and then they do it on their own. And so you're just in the middle of that process, and that makes a lot of sense for where you are right now. And you can, I think this sounds like a good place to have a good conversation with him about, hey, buddy, this you could even use in that kind of beginning a new process where you talk to him about, water his seeds, what you appreciate about him and what
Mm-hmm.
he's been doing. And then you share your own regrets. You might share your regret about yelling, and then talk to him about your concerns and difficulties in a way that's not blameful.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's going on. I know there's a lot of older kids out there. You want to do all the things they can do, but it's my job. I have to make sure that I want to let you ride your bike and I want you to be able to do these things, but I have to know that I can trust you to be safe in the
Right.
boundaries that I give you,
No,
right?
that sounds, I know it's so nice.
That's
I
okay. This
know,
is recorded. You can
exactly.
listen back.
That's right. This is true. I'll be like, hold on for 1 second. Let me just pull that episode back up.
Let me
But
take some notes.
I know,
but
but
yeah,
really, honestly, I might have to come back and like write this down so I can practice it, because it's
yeah.
just like in that moment, you're so, I really like how you just said, like, it's my job. Like and that's what I like. I couldn't come up with that one day. Like I was so in a heat of passion and so angry that it was like, I am your mother, like, you better respect me, like that. And it's like, that's not, that's the old
Yeah.
school. And that's what I'm trying so hard not to do that. And that's like came out of, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just said that.
It's
Like,
okay. It's close to the surface, right? Because that's probably how you were parented, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a habit. It's a literally a neural pathway in your brain that's pretty well worn because it was
Mm-hmm.
part of how you grew up. And so
Yeah.
it is really close to the surface. And so you're right that actually it does take kind of some forethought and some practice to access, those other this a better way of communicating. It does take
Right.
some forethought and practice. So that
Mm-hmm.
brings me to the sort of mindfulness part, because we know that that's a great tool for helping us be able to slow down, helping us to access the parts of our, that verbal part of our brain, that thoughtful part
Right.
of our brain, rather than getting hijacked by our fight, flight, or freeze. So how is that going for you, that mindfulness practice piece?
That is definitely going well.
Great.
It's definitely difficult, the times when, like I said, the highs and lows of parenting. It's like the highs, I'm like, I'm being so mindful. I am just really doing everything perfect. And then it's like you hit a low where you're like, okay, I'm just totally lost this. But it is going well. One thing that I do struggle with is trying to meditate. And I feel like, I've attempted the early wake ups, and it seems like no matter how early I get up, my kids always hear like, a crack in the floorboard, and they're like following me. But I do like the idea of, I've tried to kind of like do it sort of with them. But that hasn't really worked out too well. But I can't remember who it was that you brought on one time that talked about, I actually have done it, meditated a couple times in my bathroom.
Oh,
And
nice.
that is like, not while I'm going to the bathroom, but I found that it's kind of a good spot, because I kind of can like lock the door and I'm like, I'm in here, I'm sorry. And then I just sort of like turn on like the fan.
Oh,
And
nice. Perfect white noise.
yes. And I'm just kind of like, okay, like this is like, I am, finally having, and even if it is 5 minutes, it's like the rest of my day, it changes my attitude for the rest of the day, because the rest of the day when agitated or annoyed, it's like I go back to those 5 minutes that I had, and I'm like, well, no, don't say that you didn't have any time alone, because you did. You had 5 minutes of meditation, and that was awesome. Like, so I feel like
Okay,
that
cool.
I have to remember to do that, because, sometimes it seems like it's just, that's one of my hardest things as a mom, is just feeling like I don't have any time for myself. And that's like, I have. But if I do that starting out, it's like my day definitely starts differently. It's like the whole tone of the day is now on a different path.
And you have to think of it like exercise, right? Like a practice, like going to the gym. It's something that a muscle that we build with practice. And, your daughters too, but soon you'll get to the place where but one thing,
almost there.
You can be creative about it too. And one thing I love that bathroom thing, but also, you work as a nurse, right? So one thing you can do, if you think about it, is you can make it a practice to just leave 10 minutes earlier and not squeeze an errand in. And sit in the parking lot of where you go. Just sit in the car. You can use a guided meditation to kind of help you come into that moment a little bit more, make it a little more maybe sacred, considering that you are in the car in a parking lot, right? And then just sit back and, put the chair all the way back and just allow yourself to, that can be nice to kind of take that moment. And another practice that can be really nice when life is very full, like yours is, you can, working with your workplace, again, is like, say you get there a few minutes early. Another practice that's nice is to practice a walking meditation on the way into your office or
that's a good idea.
Whatever it is. And so you just, like, from the car, just walk kind of slowly and quietly and feel your breath and imagine your feet, kissing the earth. Thank you, earth, for being here. And just take that time to slow yourself down, because often we're like rush. You're going through Boston traffic. Oy vey. So, it's crazy. I know what that's like. And then you can maybe then take that time when you get there, if you can arrive a few minutes early, to stop and slow everything down. And maybe if that is, because I'm trying to think of what you could do that can be a regular habit that is, something that you can remember, right? That after maybe 3 or 4 weeks of sticky notes to remind you, then you're kind of in the habit.
Right. No, I that is a good point, because, well, it's funny, because oftentimes going into work, I'm listening to your podcast. So that's often when I'm like, okay, this is good. But I do like the idea of getting in the car and doing it that way, sort of just sitting there and like just having that moment, because it is stressful, like getting in the car and then because a lot of times with me, it's like I get in my car and it's like, I got to rush, I got to go to pick up. And even if it is like 5 minutes of just sitting there before I'm getting involved in the traffic and all the stress of going to pick them up and starting, everything, just having that time to just sort of like think things through.
Or that's a great time in the car for sigh breaths. So for the listeners, sigh breaths are they've done some research on sigh breaths too. And it's kind of funny, the louder and more dramatically you sigh, the more it helps you change your brain chemistry and help you into that rest and relax response. But it's something that's a little awkward to do when you're with other people, because they're like, what
is she doing?
What's your problem?
Right.
But it's great for the car, you're like,
yes.
Okay, and it feels good.
Right. Well, what I've done is one of the podcast episodes, I always forget what person it was, but someone that you had on had talked about the nasal breathing. And it was like about like one, you block like the right and then keep the left open and you breathe in. One's for like relaxation and one's for more like energizing. And I've definitely been doing that. When I try to do like remind myself of the breathing when I have that moment of like, I am ready to lose it. And I just have to like, and it's funny because my son, my middle one said to me the other day, don't forget 3 candle breaths.
Oh, that's so great. I love that.
It was so cute, but so annoying. No,
No, I imagine. Oh my
yes, I
God.
was like, thank you for reminding me that,
Thanks.
but
Thanks a
it
lot,
is
kid.
good. Right. But it's like, I'm really, and I think my kids are picking up on it. I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they're not, because I mean, like I said, the highs and lows, and this has been a month of lows to some degree of some times, and I haven't been mindful. And, and that's one thing I worry about is like, when you do have those moments where you lose it, and I lost it last week. I had a moment and I was like, oh my gosh, that was like an outer body experience. And then it was like, I had to bring myself back and say that it is okay to once in a while do that, because I used to do it all the time. I'm like, hey, this is good. Like I used to do this all the time. But now my kids are older and they see it and it's like, oh wow, it's, I really am like almost embarrassed. I'm like, I can't believe I just did that. Like, oh my gosh. And, I actually took the time to sit down with them, my 2 older ones, and sort of was like, listen, mommy just had a full on tantrum. Wasn't that ridiculous? And they were like, yeah, like, what was that? Like, I'm like, you know what? There's a lot of things going on. I said, I kind of like laid it out for them, a couple of different things that were stressful. And the thing that finally put me over the edge was we were making, I don't know, banana bread or something. I was like, oh, you want to make banana bread? Sure, let's make banana bread. And my son was mixing the bowl like frantically. And I told him 3 times, I'm like, you got to really just hold it. Hold it. It's gonna, and then all of a sudden it just went everywhere, all over the kitchen.
Great.
And it was just like, that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. But it was like, I didn't need to lose it over that. That's not what I was losing it on. And that's what I said to him. I finally was able to, calm down. And I said, buddy, I don't care about that. Like, I don't mind cleaning up a mess. I said, it's other stuff that's going on that's in the back of my mind. And I said, and I'm really sorry that I just completely lost it on you guys. I said, I had a tantrum and, so I get so worried now is that like, are they okay? Like, are they going to survive after my tantrum? Because,
yes,
you just
yes,
worry
they are.
now.
Alicia, that's a beautiful response to that, really, because you showed them. I mean, you're not expected to be perfect. We're really going for good enough, right? Because
Yeah.
what's beautiful about that is that you showed them like, you're a human with feelings, and you have the full range of feelings too, right? And what you also showed them is that it's okay to be human. It's okay to make mistakes. And this is how you repair from mistakes. And they need to see that. They need to see the example of repairing from mistakes, because they're going to lose it. And they want, they need to have a model for how to clean it up when they lose it, right? If
Right.
you
And
are recriminating, of yourself, if you are harsh on yourself and mean to yourself after losing it, and you don't create that repair and connection, it's, they call it rupture and repair. Like, you have this rupture in your relationship, but when you repair, it brings back that connection and that closeness. And that's everything. That's just like, when you go back to that physical comfort and that comforting in the beginning we talked about, that's that stuff that connects us. That's the whole motivator for your kids to work with you and to listen and to cooperate. That's everything for cooperation. So you coming back and saying, I messed up, I'm not perfect, and I'm sorry. That's awesome. That's a great thing to do. And you did not
that's
mess them up
definitely,
for life. You
oh, good. Oh, good. Because that's sort of kind of the family that I grew up with was, as a child, like if my mom did lose it on us, it was sort of like there never was that discussion later of like, and that's why I always feel bad for my mom in some ways, because I always look back and think, God, now that I'm a mom, I'm like, I get it. I know why you used to like lose it on us. Like, it is hard. But I'm like, I went, and that's why I decided another reason to join this mindful parenting course, because I was like, you know what? It's just so sad that we never had that, that after look of like saying, geez, you know what, guys, I worked a late night shift. My mom was a nurse too. And saying like, listen, I didn't get home until almost midnight. I had to drive you guys to school, and then I was doing this and that. I'm sorry I lost it on you guys. It was like we hardly ever got that I'm sorry. And so I was like, I just do not want to do that with my kids. I do not want to have them be in fear and think, oh no, how can we like make her happy, or how can we, make sure that she doesn't get mad and lose it on us, And so,
you're being transparent, you're being human, which is so good. And if you looking back, like if you and your mom, she was doing the best she could with whatever, we all know that, but she could have been, maybe opened up a little bit more, maybe you would have understood that it's not
right.
Also, kids tend to say it's all about me, right? You're like,
Right.
oh, it's all about me. And that was great that you told your kids like, oh, there's all this other stuff happening. It really was
right.
banana bread just tipped me over, right? So it's
right.
good for them to know that it's not all about them.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, Alicia, this is I really appreciate you coming on to talk about this. You have a lot of insight and a lot of clarity, and you're right in the thick of it with two.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, this has just been so helpful. I mean, like the course has been so helpful. I listen to the podcast all the time, and I think what you're doing is so amazing, because it's just such a relief. I feel like it's been like a weight off my shoulders whenever I do listen to you, because it's like, yes, we are all doing the best that we can. And it's hard. And I think that listening to some of the suggestions are just like, oh my gosh, like I have these moments where I'm like that aha moment, and I'm like, yes, I get it. That's right. That's what
Yay.
so,
thank you. I appreciate you telling me that. But let's look at what, so we talked about your wins, which are awesome, and getting your meditation practice in. And we talked about how to kind of hold those boundaries a little bit more. So what are you going to take away from this conversation and take into your life
I
a little more?
say,
do you have someone at the door?
Oh no, don't worry. Just the mailman.
Okay.
Just the mailman. What I think what I want to take away is just the fact that there is another way to address like the discipline. And I think that's a huge thing, because I think that's something that I've been running into a lot lately, where, so many parents are out there with their sort of ways for discipline and how they think it should be done. And these people are my girlfriends, I'll give them, I tell them about your podcast all the time. I'm like, listen, you have to listen to her. I'm telling you, but I think what I would say I want to take away is that there are other ways to sort of discipline, and that like just having that conversation about even the walking to school and the biking in the neighborhood. It's like, I don't need to be this sort of disciplinarian and be out there and like screaming at my kids and being like, no, you can't walk to school and get in the house. And that there's a different approach, and that I think, like you said, using empathy to sort of say like, I'm really sorry. Like today you did lose your privilege with the bike, and it's got to go away. And I just want you to be safe. And I like, again, like how you said, that's my job. Like my job as a parent. And there was a podcast where another one, not to keep referencing all your podcasts, but I took this one. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that is it. It was talking about treating your own kids as if they were your friends' kids at
Oh
times.
yeah. I
And
love
I
that.
loved that. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like I wouldn't let my girlfriend's son be out riding, around the neighborhood without a helmet on and like, hey, woo, I
Yeah.
would pull him aside and say, geez, buddy, like, I'm just so nervous. Like, oh my gosh, like, what if something happened to you? But it's funny, like, that's how I would talk to my neighbor's, child. But if it were my own, I'd be like, get over here and you got to put your helmet on it, and it's like you step back and think, oh my gosh, like, he's not going to be receptive if I approach it that way.
Yeah,
So I need
he
to,
literally can't learn because his brain has gone into fight, flight, or freeze. So
right.
when that happens, they literally can't learn anything. It's just like fear.
Right. It's fear.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that, I feel like knowing that there's a different way to go about the discipline this was refreshing because it reminded me again, okay, so today if we have an issue with the rules of like, okay, no, you can't go past that neighbor's house, and the consequence will be the bike has to go away for the afternoon,
And so,
and that if
yeah, Alicia, when you talked to him about that this afternoon, right? Instead of
mm-hmm.
framing it in the negative like that, like,
Okay.
if you can't do it, have a talk with him about explain why it's so important, right? And then say, I want you to be able to ride your bike for as long as you can. So I know that when you respect that boundary, I'll be super psyched to let you ride as much as you can. And I really don't want to have, it would be a shame to have to stop biking because you went over the boundary, right? I want to make sure you're safe. So frame it in the
See?
positive, right?
You say it so well. I got to write these down. I'll be like, do you mind holding on? Let me just get my index card out of my back pocket.
Well, Alicia, it has been so fun to talk to you, and I really appreciate you sharing a little slice of your life and your story with everyone for the podcast. I know it makes a big difference for the listener to hear, real stories and real challenges. So I can't thank you enough. So
Yeah,
thanks so
no,
much.
of all your help with how to deal with kids because it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's just, I was failing and frustrated too, right? There's things to learn. So, yeah, thank you so much, Alicia, and good luck this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Hunter. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I love that idea of treat your child as if they were your friend's child, right? Like, that self-compassion inside how we respond to ourselves. And this idea of how we talk being so important as what we say. And it really is, we really do need these two wings to fly, right? We can't just think, oh, I'm just going to say these new things, because then when we get triggered, it goes out the window. Our brain literally bypasses that new knowledge. So we need those mindfulness skills, tools to ground us, to create that calm and that peace inside, so that then we can really respond from an intentional place. So if this is something that you would like to do, if you want help on, if you want to know that you're not alone working and meeting other moms, a sisterhood who would also like to thrive, I invite you to check out the Mindful Mama Transformation Coaching Groups. I may still have spots open, and we are enrolling for August through December. And you can learn more about that on mindfulmamamentor.com/group coaching. And if you have questions, I'm happy to hop on the phone and chat with you about it. But it's a small group where we go through a special program to really help you get to that place of thriving. And it really meets you where you are. So we kind of start with where you are and help you bit by bit over time, create the habits and the tools that are going to serve you for the rest of your life. So it can make a huge difference. I invite you to check it out at mindfulmamamentor.com/ group coaching. And if you found this episode interesting, if you think the people in your neighborhood, your mom's group, or your school will enjoy it and like it, please share it around and make sure you're subscribed and all that good stuff. And all the feedback I get really makes me feel amazing. So thank you so much. And the reviews on iTunes, they make such a huge difference. All that stuff makes a huge difference. So thank you for all of that. Keep it coming. Share the podcast around. It makes a big difference. And I'm wishing you a beautiful week. I hope wish you some calm and some groundedness and all of that stuff that we need all the time, right? So I wish that for you. I'll be practicing it too. And I look forward to connecting with you again next week. Namaste. Are you a mom who wants to feel less stressed and enjoy motherhood more? Do you want to be calmer with your kids and be more present for all of your life? I'm a mom who has gone from really being stressed and yelling when my kids were young to having a more grounded, more at ease relationship with life and having more enjoyable cooperative relationships with my kids. And I've shown hundreds and thousands of women around the world how to do this. And I want to show you how to do it too. So if you are currently feeling stuck or stagnant, this is definitely for you. I've created a free downloadable Audible training, Mindfulness for Moms, the Superpower You Need. And it will show you how to respond rather than react, how to let go of stress and feel more grounded in seconds, how to have a smoother day today and become more present for your kids for a lifetime. To get on this audio training absolutely free, simply visit the website www.mindfulmomguide.com.